it simply, the Philippine Development Plan is a plan that we have from 2017 to 2022. What do we intend to do and how do we foresee the country from 2017 to 2022? The purpose of which is to put and create economic plans, not just economic plans, but to thresh out all the things that we need to do to make a country which is more vibrant than what we have seen before.
Ang importance ng infrastructure sa PDP is that it is cross-cutting, which means it supports all other sectors in the economy. Like for example, sa health, sa education, sa agriculture, as well as sa mga major industries natin. For example, sa telecommunications, by giving focus on infrastructure, nakapagbigay din ng jobs, nakapag-provide ng support sa mga businesses, among others. So in relation sa plan, the infrastructure really is a support structure in order to help build the economy and the country.
How do we address poverty? The way we can address poverty is really to look at the poorest rural communities. And these poorest rural communities have two things in common. One, they are the conflict-affected communities. And number two, they are really the most underdeveloped communities. So, if we want to address poverty by the term of President Duterte, there are 5 things that we must remember. And we hope that the PDP can include this. Number 1, determine where are the poor people. Geography. Look for them. There are very few. Actually, if you look in diagram, this is the location where you put them. Number 2, what sector do you need to address? And that's agriculture, fishery, tourism, and all materials that they provide. Number 3, what are their capital assets? You must address their unskilled abilities. Number 4, how do you minimize their costs? By reducing their costs in terms of food, transportation, cost of lost income from flooding, lack of irrigation, and lack of access to these governments. I provide all necessary infrastructure, utilities, facilities to best poor people. No? If you address this, then you address poverty. Unlike if you give 80% of your resources to people who are already rich, then after 6 years, the rich become richer and the poor remain poorer. So, if there's anything that we want you to remember in this presentation, it is this. We need to bridge the poorest communities, again, by looking at the top 20% areas that will provide 80% of the output after 6 years. And that is addressing the joint communities that in this Venn diagram can be defined as they are the poorest communities intersecting the conflict-affected communities and the underdeveloped communities and provide them all the support that they need in terms of roads, bridges, full social infrastructure, 100% access to potable water, and development of economic logistics corridor, etc. Improve accessibility to telecommunication services. These poorest, conflict-affected, underdeveloped communities have no access to cell sites, no internet. How can they be able to leapfrog the lack of libraries when you cannot even Google? How can you be able to access better cost per goods when you cannot even text? So telecommunication is very important. There are strategies here. I won't read them anymore. B, technology and innovation. Again, it talks about the evolution of the Department of Information and Communication Technology. Data there. Next, power and electrification. If you look at the triumvirate, who are the poorest, underdeveloped, and conflict-affected communities, they are those without power, living under the dark. While the problem of other communities is getting air conditioning. Their main power is even just having light for their students. No? So, again, the assessment is there. You could read them later on. No, it's essential that this Department of Energy can have a more active, in the entire ARMM, there's no agency in charge for this. So, 90% of our communities don't have access to power and electricity, and Lanao Lake, which provides the power to the entire Mindanao, has the highest cost, and 90% of the communities do not have power. We need national intervention. Again, it details again expansion of DOE and NEA in the ARMM, and electrification of 90% of the communities, these poorest communities, which are off-grid, and therefore, national government in the next 6 years of the Duterte administration can invest billions. China is here. They invest billions in utilizing solar energy to all of these isolated communities. Next, irrigation. If you look at the poorest, most conflict-affected areas, underdeveloped areas, these are the areas with agriculture that doesn't have water. We irrigate, yes, vast lands in urban areas that are peaceful already. But those conflict-affected areas are essentially embroiled in poverty, underdevelopment, and conflict because they cannot till their lands, because they would not have the power to fix irrigation. And the regional government, provincial government, municipal government is beyond their power. Irrigation is not even within our reach. So how can we manage the most important resource, which is agriculture, and our industry is 90% agriculture, without irrigation under our hands? So essentially, irrigation is put down in a PDP, ensure 100% irrigation to the poorest, conflict-affected, underdeveloped communities. We find that because we're not saying just develop the Bangsamoro areas. We're saying, as a general principle of the country, address the poorest of the poor. Next, full devolution of the DOTC. Again, we have problems with the ports, transportation. We have registered vehicles in the ARMM being caught by the regular administrative districts. Again, putting pressure on our dignity as an autonomous region. The same is true with the ports. The ports, we have one of, the Bangsamoro areas have progressed because for 6 centuries we have been traders. That is our greatest strength, and that is the one that is built in pride. With the autonomy, the ports and the DOTC not fully evolved. We do not get strong funding for the development of ecozones. We have Poyo Port, one of the most strategic areas beyond Davao, beyond Quezon, and yet it is being deprived of full support. So the PDP should include the development of Poyo Port as one of the most strategic entry points for the entire mainland Mindanao, and the Basuta, Tawi-Tawi, Sinulong, Sitantay as the front line of the BMP Yata. There are recommendations already included there. These are some pictures of the Poyo Port and how it has been from 1 million, been crossing 100 million after a few tweaks in its governance. And there is still so much potential. Next is the full support to the regional, provincial, municipal ports for economic growth. Again, we cannot just talk about providing housing, education, without an economic backbone to these communities. It will simply not be sustainable. And the only way is to have national political will to do that. Next is, as regards the environment, to include the ARMM in the protected areas, as well as delineation of protected areas, the evolution of these protected areas. As you know, ARMM is one of the few untouched, beautiful forests and environmental areas. We need national trust as well to help us maintain that, to help these watersheds be maintained. The same is true with the marina on the non-evolution of DOTC. Again, we cannot overemphasize the DOTC is a means for economic development, and without full and clear evolution of economic support, our economic development for these poorest communities will be deprived. Now let me jump into the meat of our presentation, which is infrastructure. Again, rapid infrastructure development and connectivity for the most affected, conflict-affected, poorest rural communities. It already states there. ARMM has the lowest density in terms of national and other local roads. And these are just examples of, say, 80% of the people there. They are not even thankful that their issue is not already in our cars would, it would be difficult for our cars to drive to school or to other places. Their issue is that you could not even walk on these roads to school. Imagine walking in that kind of mud for 100 meters. It's impossible. So it is vital to address the issues of these isolated communities, poorest, conflict-affected, and rural communities, so that they can progress. If you have agricultural areas with these kinds of blocks, how can you progress? If you have bridges in these areas that are made of that, how can you even carry a sack of your produce? Next, in the island communities in Basulta, and we have gone there, you do not even develop, you should not bring your heavy machineries to develop the roads. We saw fit as a national policy to ensure that these conflict-affected, underdeveloped, poorest communities will have full access to roll-on, roll-off assets so that they can really progress, so that they can be front doors of development. Establishment of local logistics corridor. Please do not give us pitans, small coins. What we need is logistic corridors that will connect us to international and national markets so that our seaweeds will not have to be processed only in Cebu. We can then decide to process it in Malaysia or process it ourselves. These are the types of agricultural roads that we need to develop, and we hope that the national policy will continue the present thrust of paving most of our roads. School buildings, again, most of these areas have 2 generations already of students whose graduates are equivalent to grade 5 pupils of Manila. And what can we expect? Then teachers will have grade 5 standards, and the USA study had proven this already as part of their study. So we need, again, to close the gap in terms of school buildings, in terms of having these facilities for these children, and even chairs. Sustainable access to potable water by the poorest and most conflict-affected communities. My father grew up in our community, died of severe liver cirrhosis, which is part of this waterborne disease. 3 of my uncles died, and hundreds of graduates from Sulu and these communities apply for jobs abroad. They are not accepted because they have hepatitis sickness that is born from this lack of access to water systems. And therefore, if we want the nation to move forward, a legacy of the Duterte administration can be 100% access to potable water to all these poorest communities in the Venn diagram that I showed. Poorest, conflict-affected, underdeveloped areas. Furthermore, database, as I said, database all these communities and really ensure that these areas will have potable water. But there is another catch, the sustainability of it all. DILG has something to make, DOH has water, DPWH has water, so many international things have water, but there's a need for the national government to establish local rural water supply management committee beyond LUA, because LUA is level 3. We need the sustainability aspect that will not only fund but will as well help in the sustainable management of these water systems. Mitigate effects of environmental hazards. Yesterday, for 2 days, we had infrastructure convergence summit by 100 municipal planning officers in Mindanao and Maguindanao. You know what? The most common problem, aside from roads and water, is the flooding. Their houses are regularly flooded quarterly. And how can you progress? No wonder Mindanao is one of the poorest provinces in the country, because if you go to the outskirts, their houses are flooded quarterly. If you go to Maguindanao, their houses are flooded every 2 months. Without addressing a national standard for flooding, we cannot progress. And therefore, national government should not only have the Mindanao River Basin to address this. And I was with some Chinese consultants a while ago, and they're going to do some dredging and do some preventive walls here in Cotabato City. But how about the poorest, conflict-affected, underdeveloped Who will take charge of that? And DPWH cannot address this because the cost is just so massive, and there must be a national study, and therefore the national government should create flood control mechanism for these special areas, especially for example, Ilanao and Mindanao. And mind you, most of these areas are BFF, MILF, ISIS communities, and maybe they're like that because they feel that nobody is really giving enough attention to them. And unless we give special attention, Mindanao River Basin has been here for 10 years, and did it solve the Cotabato problem? No. Therefore, it's time for the Duterte administration to put it in its timeline within the next 6 years, all flooding in this conflict-affected, poorest, and underdeveloped areas should be addressed. Next, these are just examples of communities. DPWH can build roads, yes, but without sustainable flood protection in these communities, these would simply not be held. Imagine living in these areas where at night when flood comes, children would just be washed to the streams. Next recommendation, special body that will address again this part of the flood control. As regards the sustainability for LGUs in maintaining roads. You know, we're building 1,500 kilometers. We have built around almost 1,000 kilometers of roads. Not only national roads, but we include local roads. But there is a need for the DILG national, to make it a national policy, to mandate LGUs to spend at least 5%. If you could spend 5% on gender, why not 5% on asset preservation of vital connectivity roads? Who is maintaining the provincial roads? Many of the provinces are not maintaining it, but actually the road board under the law is mandated to maintain the provincial roads, but they are not yet doing that. Therefore, under the Duterte administration and the PDP, make it a policy to require the road board to invest and provide additional funding to the provincial roads, provincial governments to maintain these provincial roads. And number two, the DILG should make a memo that will require all LGUs to spend at least 5% of their budget to maintain their provincial roads, municipal roads, city roads, and barangay roads. Because DPWH can build the road, but after 2 years, these assets will degrade easily without maintenance of the drainage, and even the vegetation will take over the road. Next is develop the ecotourism and historical sites. Yes, ARMM may be the poorest region, but it is also one of the most beautiful and one of the most historically rich areas. It is only in ARMM that you can find 600-year-old monuments, 600-year-old mosques, hundreds of years old areas, and even the most vital historic sites and most undisturbed tourism sites. Yes, we do not have industries, but if we develop these tourism sites, and I will show some of these pictures, then these can be alternatives to Boracay that will provide economic livelihood to the people, that will make them go into the light, avoid terrorism, and provide alternate means of income. But of course, we need to build long roads, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers. The PDP should include when ARMM, DPWH would request for 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers of roads that will lead to waterfalls, tourism sites, let it be, because that will allow economic development to those communities, as well as bringing these people who are conflict affected and prone to terrorism and insurgency into the light. These are just some pictures of areas that we have database that can be potential areas. Look at that Panambangan Island in Tawi-Tawi. Yes, Tawi-Tawi might have kidnapped 2 months ago, but the provincial government is trying to develop that. And national government should support those kinds of things if we want economic development. In other countries, tourism is the #1 economy that is fueling them. Why not in ARMM? Another full investment for other infrastructure, utilities, and facilities. Take note, we just don't need roads, bridges, and ports. The facilities that comes to them must be addressed as well. For example, seaweed processing, the warehouses for the ports, and other economic necessities that will really foster the development of these communities. We really need, the most basic, dependable power, dependable water, warehouses, cold storage facilities. Imagine in Zamboanga City, you have 11 of the biggest sardine factories in the country, grossing around 5 billion to 10 billion a year. But not a single peso goes to Sulu where it gets its cash from. Not a single peso goes to the ARMM where its resources are from. And that is why Zamboanga City will never approve to a Bangsamoro waters. Because if you look at a Google map that will show how ARMM looks at night, the light in the Sulu Sea, besides Sulu, is bigger than Metro Manila. Because there are over 500 per-signer sets operating in those Sulu Sea, grossing 5 billion to 10 billion a year. So, without these facilities, how can we progress? How can we progress if all our seaweeds are being processed for 30 years in Cebu instead of in our areas? Have we not heard of the dependency theory that applies worldwide, which states all areas and communities that supply raw materials will forever remain poor unless they add value to their areas. And therefore, in the PDP, that should be the principle. In the NEDA, that should be the principle. In the DA, that should be the principle. Communities that provide raw materials must be supported to add value to their products in seaweeds, coconut, and other areas. I'm approaching completion. Interregional economic logistics as well needs to be developed. We also have flagship projects that will allow our communities to be more connected. These conflict-affected, poor, undeveloped communities are essentially like that because they are not connected. Even your body, try to cut the blood supply of your arm to your heart without blood flowing, it will die, right? Imagine these communities whose supply, whose roads, whose accessibility have been denied from them for 30, 40, 50 years. If we want them to progress, if we want them to end insurgency, if we want them to not join terrorism, then we must bring light to them, then we must let them flourish, then we must give blood back to these communities. These are just parts of the pictures later on I'll show. Another sustainability mechanism that the DPWH ARMM, the Army General, is applying, that even Senator Lacson had acknowledged during the Senate hearing. We want full transparency in the implementation of infrastructure projects by all agencies, by making all projects available for public viewing on their website using geotag photos and Google Earth platforms. This will allow, the greatest victims, the greatest injustice is done to the isolated, poorest, underdeveloped, conflict-affected communities, where projects may not get well implemented. But if we do this, have full transparency, and allow anybody in the world to check these projects, geotag, Google Earth-based platform projects, make it a national policy by NEDA and the PDP, that there's full transparency in this implementation, then you have nationwide full development of rural communities because we can be assured that these projects are being implemented. These are just pictures of once isolated communities. The usual before was isolated communities, inspectors would never be able to go there. But using this technology, we don't have to go there. We just need internet connection, and we can be rest assured that these projects are being implemented nationwide. And DPWH is already doing that. Mandated geotagging and publication in the website. As I said, the flagship communities would like to tell NEDA that we will be pushing for this interconnectivity roads in the most rural areas. Give them a rotonda, give them a road. For example, here, I'll just give you an example. Here in Akbar, it used to take 2 hours from the people of Akbar and Ajul to go to the port of Lamitan. This was before the Abu Sayyaf hub. Before a house here would have 10 firearms because it would take them 2 hours to go to the port. But after investing 150 million to 200 million on an 8-kilometer road that connected them via the coastal road, now it takes them from 2 hours only 5 to 8 minutes. People there who had 10 firearms had sold it and had bought motorcycles and vans. People who used to not go to the town could easily go to the town in a few minutes. And that had transformed a poor, underdeveloped, conflict-affected community to a bustling community now. And that is what we want to replicate nationwide, not only in the entire ARMM. These are just some pictures as well. And for example, in Sulu, in Omar, there are areas that used to be hubs for kidnapped victims in the coastal areas because it's impossible to go there. When we built a road and people in that community for the first time in 30 years was able to visit that, now they say the Abu Sayyaf could no longer put the kidnapped victims there. And therefore there's a strong correlation between infrastructure and peace and order and development. If you provide access to law enforcement, provide access for goods and the people to travel, then the problem of insurgency, terrorism, lawless elements are actually also resolved. So these are just flagship projects that we want also to mention. For example, shortcut between Marawi City to Cagayan de Oro. Shortcut, have we not built a road from Cotabato City via Lebak, Damutla, going to General Santos and Sultan Kudarat? Why? Because are these areas mostly Muslims? It should be included in the National Philippine Development Plan that these areas, while they may be Muslim dominated and we still need 50 kilometers of roads, this must be prioritized and interconnected. For example, in this road, this is where the ISS is currently operating, and that's like a virgin forest. We need to build a road that will connect that here to Pigtawayan, that will cut travel time by 2 to 3 hours from Lanao del Sur to Maguindanao to Davao City. But it's not yet being done. But these are the areas where the ISS, the Mountain Group, the former camps of the MILF, the BIF are all located. But we must build these roads so that people in these communities can be able to taste the sweetness of development and life. And the same is Kapay Tagoloan, the same is the Lanao Lake, the same with the downtown circumferential road to have access to these tourism sites. The same with the Sulu circumferential road, which has been the dream of Suarez since 10 years ago. But these 160 kilometers are now ongoing and being developed. And therefore, I end by saying, our national vision that we hope that can be incorporated in the PDP, if we truly want peace and development and change to come within the Duterte administration, is by 2022, all poorest, conflict-affected and underdeveloped communities shall have from 40% to 100% paved national, provincial, city, municipal, and logistic zones to ports, airports, and bridges. Number 2, from 8% to 100% access to potable water. From 5% to 100% protection from flooding and other environmental hazards. From 5% to 100% developed and accessible tourism and historical and cultural sites. From 15% to 100% logistics corridors to allow economic transport of added fishery products. Have economic activities and industries that will provide jobs to poor and skilled members of these communities. 12% to 100% access to electricity. 20% to 100% access to irrigation. 10% to 100% access to telecommunications like Globe Smart. 2% to 100% access to the internet. 50% to 100% access to school buildings. 60% to 100% access to health facilities. 10% to 100% environmental protection and development. 100% infra projects in the poorest communities with geotags and available online. We have told you that these communities, because of isolation, children had always been playing with guns. They have always been wishing to kill soldiers. But because of the road projects that we're doing now, things are being different in ARMM. Children are no longer playing with guns. Their father are already selling it and buying motorcycles. And children are already playing with wooden motorcycles. And we dream that all the rural, poorest, conflict-affected communities in ARMM, together with the national, in the nation, will have a prosperous future in the spirit of the Duterte administration. Thank you.